Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you tuning in. Our subject has been on the Ten Commandments, and today we're doing commandment number 4. Now, commandment number 4 has to do with the Sabbath day. And interestingly enough, that there are more verses in this commandment. I believe there are 4 verses that are in this commandment, and it's more than any of the other commandments. Now, that doesn't mean that this commandment is more important than the other ones, but it is interesting that there are more words and more verses having to do with commandment number 4. Let me read. In fact, there are four verses altogether. Let me read the first one. It's verse 8. So we're looking in Exodus chapter 20, verse 8, and it says, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy." So the Sabbath, probably as you know, was the seventh day. That is to say that God created the heavens and the earth and everything that was in it in 6 days, and then on the seventh day he rested. And we also know that the seventh day, we consider that Saturday. And we'll be talking about that a little bit later. But notice in this verse that it says, God says for us to remember it. Now let's think about that just a minute, about what that involves. I know most of us, we all know what the word remember means, but if we could put it in context, it might help us to think a little more seriously about it. We remember birthdays of our loved ones, and we remember holidays. We know, we can tell you when those days are because we've committed it to our memory. And God says about this day that we're supposed to remember it as well. Now, sadly, I say this sadly because this commandment, I can just say that I regularly fail to keep it. But we're told to remember it and keep it holy. Now, what does that mean? It means to make sure that it's sacred and that it's set apart. Now, the next 2 verses I want to read to you, that's verses 9 and 10. And so in Exodus chapter 20, verses 9 and 10, it says, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. So everything and everyone is to cease from work and from labor, and we're to rest. Now Jesus had something I thought was really significant about the Sabbath. He said this. He said that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. And I think what that means is the Sabbath is not more important than man is. The Sabbath is not more important to God than man is. And I think another thing that's interesting, Jesus said this, and Jesus was actually God in the flesh. Remember when he was born, the angel said that you shall call his name Emmanuel, which is interpreted God with us. So Jesus, when he spoke as God. And again, he said this, he said that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Now God gave this commandment as well as the others for our benefit. God's word and the things that he tells us and commands us are not given arbitrarily. That is, they're not given as a whim. They are given for our benefit. They benefit us individually. They will benefit our family. They benefit our community, and they benefit our nation. And another thing that's interesting to note is that Jesus was actually accused by the religious leaders of breaking the Sabbath. And not only was he accused of breaking the Sabbath, but his disciples as well. Now, Jesus was accused because he had healed people on the Sabbath. Amazingly, those religious leaders thought this was wrong. Now just think about that a minute. They said that there were 6 other days that he should be healing people, and they said he should not be healing on the Sabbath, which I think is actually an amazing thing, that they thought it was wrong to do good on that day. Listen, if you can do good on the Sabbath, you should do it. And Jesus did good every day. And just because it was the Sabbath, it wasn't going to keep him from doing good. Now, another thing I think that's interesting is that in the New Testament, when you study the New Testament about its teachings on the Sabbath, there's actually, there's really not a lot of information in the New Testament regarding keeping the Sabbath. And I think that is interesting. Now, the reason may be this: it may be related to Jesus' resurrection taking place on Sunday or on the first day of the week. You see, the early church met together on this day. And Sunday has in the past been referred to as the Christian Sabbath. You normally don't hear that now, but it's also referred to as the Lord's Day. So in the not too distant past, right here in the United States, there were laws that were framed to respect and to honor this day as a day of worship and rest, but not anymore. Those laws have been scrubbed clean, because now the Lord's Day, this special day that we celebrate and that we worship, is treated just like any other day, which is kind of sad, I think. It seems like to me that we have gradually, I'll say gradually, but it may be more pronounced than that, gotten further and further away from God. And I believe that there's a correlation between our society getting further and further away from God and getting more and more messed up. And the further away we get, or the farther away that we get, the more messed up that our culture seems to be. Now let me read the last verse, which would be verse 11. And that's in Exodus 20, chapter 11. It says, "For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath and hallowed it." Now, hallowed it just means it was set apart as a holy day. Now, generally speaking, for the Christian church, Jesus' resurrection from the dead on the first day of the week has changed the day that we set aside to come together and to worship. Now, God rested the 7th day after creation. And this is just a thought of mine. Perhaps Jesus' resurrection was a part of the new creation. You know, the Bible and God speaks of there being a new creation. He says, "I shall make all things new." So maybe our worship and our celebration on the first day of the week has some significance to the new creation. I'm just not sure about that, but I think people have a question as why do we worship on Sunday and not on the 7th day on Saturday, which was the Sabbath. But I believe it has something significant to do with Jesus' resurrection. Now let me just conclude by saying that I hope that you set aside this day to worship and rest from all of your other normal activities. I hope that you do that. It's good for you. God intended for us to remember He made the Sabbath for us and not us for the Sabbath. So I hope that you're recognizing that and recognizing the importance to rest from just all of the hubbub, and also to give time for God and give time to renew your soul. I hope that this has been helpful to you. We really, again, appreciate you tuning in. I hope you have a really good week. And remember that next week we're going to be covering commandment number 5. And number 5 has to do with honoring our father and our mother. So we would love for you to tune in. I want to mention also that if you're watching this on Facebook, be sure and like it and share it. We would appreciate that. So thanks again for tuning in.